under the icy, star-studded sky of Alaska, where mountains rise like silent sentinels and darkness swallows the valleys, there lies a small town called Ruby. Nestled deep in the frozen heart of Alaska, Ruby is one of those places that seem to exist on the margins of time. Founded in the early 19th century after the gold rush turned its mines into promises of wealth, Ruby was once a vibrant place, home to thousands of dreamers. Today, however, its dirt roads are home to just 139 souls, isolated from the world by a vast expanse of tundra and forest. With only one store that serves as a market, pharmacy, and post office, Ruby holds just over 100 residents. The modern world hasn't fully arrived here. There are no roads connecting the town to the rest of the country. Access is only possible by boat or small aircraft, and the few existing cell phones serve more as a comfort item than a real communication tool. Here, residents live off hunting, fishing, and modest farming, their lives marked by simplicity and the absence of technology. Cell phones are rare, and the flickering light of a television is a luxury for only a few. In this almost pre-technological setting lives a man named Roger McCarty. Born and raised in the heart of Alaska, Roger is what you might call an Athabascan, someone who spent their entire life in the forest, hunting, fishing, and respecting nature's harsh rules. He lives alone in a wooden cabin on the slopes of the mountains surrounding Ruby, and knows better than most what it means to rely solely on oneself to survive. Raised among wolves and bears, Roger had learned to master fear, to face the unknown with the cold resolve of someone who knows that hesitation can cost a life. It was a clear spring night in 1999. The sky, clear and streaked with stars, revealed a frozen beauty. The temperature hovered around 15 degrees below zero. Roger decided it would be a good night for hunting. He dressed in thick leather clothing, prepared his shotgun, and set out on his snowmobile toward the banks of the Yukon River, an area where wolves often prowled for easier prey. He knew that trail like the back of his hand. Even in the dark, the small headlight on the vehicle was enough to light his way. But that night, something felt wrong. As soon as he reached the riverbank, Roger felt a chill that didn't come from the cold. It was as if something was watching him, hidden among the trees' shadows. He tried to ignore the feeling but couldn't. His senses, honed by a lifetime in the forest, knew how to detect danger. And at that moment, everything in his mind was screaming that he was being hunted. Roger turned off the engine and stepped off the snowmobile, his steps crunching softly against the frozen ground. He walked around, searching for signs. No footprints, no rustling branches. But there was an unnatural silence, as if even the animals had fled. The air felt heavier. The usual forest sounds, the rustling of trees, the distant howl of a wolf, suddenly stopped. He felt an invisible gaze fixed on his back, a presence watching him from the shadows. Roger, who never backed down, spun on his heels, shotgun in hand, scanning the darkness. Nothing. Only the frozen void staring back. But the chill running up his spine wasn't from the cold. It was something primal, something he couldn't name. For the first time in his life, Roger McCarty felt fear. Determined to return home, he got on the snowmobile and accelerated, the engine roaring into the night. But the feeling of being hunted only grew. At every turn, every passing shadow, he could swear something was following him, something that made no sound, but was undeniably there. Suddenly, a searing pain exploded in his left thigh, like a burning needle had pierced his flesh. He screamed, nearly losing control of the vehicle, but didn't stop. The burning sensation spread, and panic took over. Roger arrived at his cabin breathless, locking the door as if that could stop whatever had followed him. He took a deep breath and decided to check his leg. Only then, under the faint light of a lamp, did he examine the injury. There, on his thigh, was a small bleeding puncture wound, and beneath the skin, something hard, something that didn't belong to him. The strange thing wasn't just the wound, it was the feeling that something remained inside. Under the skin, Roger felt a metallic, cold presence, as if he had been struck by a projectile. He thought it might be a pellet, maybe, but there was no sound of a shot. No animal nearby, no movement. Before he could think further, a light invaded his home. It wasn't a flashlight, it wasn't fire. It was a white light, so strong and intense it illuminated every inch of the cabin as if it were daytime. Exaggerated in proportion, it was as if the sun had descended from the sky and hovered above the roof. Roger looked out the window and saw the trees outside bathed in that surreal brightness, as if spotlights from the sky were shining down on his house. But there was no sound, no engine, no rotor, no hum, only the light, pure and silent. He stood still. His heart pounded like a wild drum in his chest. For long minutes the light remained, then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Roger didn't know what to think. He sat on the bed, trying to process everything that had happened. The pain in his leg was already secondary to the strangeness of what he had just experienced. He thought he was just tired, that maybe it had all been a hallucination caused by the cold or loneliness. But as he lay down, came the most terrifying moment of his life. He was no longer in control of his own body. Still lying down, he began to levitate. He was taken by an invisible force that gently pulled him out of bed through the closed door of the cabin. Face down, floating without the ability to move, Roger passed over the roof of his own home. He looked down and saw the house shrink, then the town of Ruby, and then the district of Fairbanks blur beneath him. In seconds, the impossible became real. He saw the lights of major cities below. Seattle with its shimmering lights, Chicago with its skyscrapers, New York with its pulsing chaos, as if he were traveling at absurd speed, without ever changing position. All in silence, all out of his control. And then, suddenly, everything went dark. Roger could smell the salt of the ocean in the air, though he couldn't move or scream. Something pulled him upward, and the next thing he saw was the rustic ceiling of his cabin as he woke, the pale morning sun flooding the room. Dazed, he sat up in bed, his mind struggling to separate dream from reality. But the memories came in fragments, like pieces of a broken film. He saw himself lying on a cold table, nearly naked, his body shivering. Around him, tall and slender figures moved silently. There were other people there, also lying down. Unknown faces, frightened eyes. No one spoke. The light above his eyes was so intense he couldn't make out the creature's features. But he knew, deep in his soul, they weren't human. Roger tried to scream, but his voice was trapped. Then everything dissolved, and he fell back into the bed, waking with his heart in his throat. After that, emptiness. He woke the next morning in his bed, as if everything had been a dream, a nightmare too vivid to ignore. But the pain in his leg remained, the hole, the object beneath the skin. It was all still there. For more than 20 years, Roger kept that secret to himself. He avoided talking about it, afraid of being ridiculed or called insane in a town where sanity is as valuable as gold. He didn't know what had happened to him. He had never studied ufology. He had no access to information. Living the way he did, isolated from the world, there weren't many people to talk to. But everything changed one afternoon in 2011. While watching TV during a rare visit to Fairbanks, he saw something that made him freeze. a doctor removing metallic implants from people who claimed to have been abducted by aliens. Small objects that emitted radio frequency, exactly like what he felt pulsing in his thigh. In that moment, something inside him clicked. He knew he wasn't crazy, it had really happened. In 2021, with the help of a television production company, Roger finally shared his story with the world. A documentary series production team decided to investigate his case in depth. He told his entire story. He showed the wound. And eventually, he was taken to a medical center where a specialist, Dr. Van Heaven's Way, began a series of tests. A skeptic by nature, the doctor didn't believe in abduction theories. But he agreed to run the tests to be sure. And what he found left him speechless. The first exam was an X-ray, and there it was. A small metallic object, about 3 millimeters in size, located near the left femur. Most impressive was that the tissue around the object was completely regenerated, a sign it had been there for many years, and Roger had never had any surgery on his leg. Next came the radio frequency test. The equipment measured signals in different parts of the body. Under normal conditions, readings fluctuated between 3 and 7. But when the device approached Roger's thigh, the numbers shot up to 15, 17, 19. An abnormal frequency, clearly localized in that specific spot. The object was transmitting some kind of signal. They decided to perform a minor surgery. The object was successfully removed. And immediately after its removal, the radio equipment was used again. The numbers returned to normal. The strangest part, though, was what happened to the implant outside the body. It stopped emitting any kind of signal, as if it had been shut off. After reviewing the case, Dr. Heaven's Way admitted, "The numbers don't lie, and I saw it with my own eyes. There's definitely something strange here. I think it's real." Today, Roger speaks openly about what happened that cold night in 1999. Not out of vanity, but because now he has proof. Science, however reluctantly, had to admit that something was there, something strange, something unexplainable. Ufologists believe that this kind of implant is used for monitoring, a form of biotelemetry employed by beings from beyond Earth. Just as we do with animals we track in the wild, these chips would allow for monitoring vital signs, location, and other biological data. And for some reason we may never understand, Roger was chosen. The object was sent for analysis, but to this day the results have not been made public, and maybe they never will be. The case of Roger McCarty joins a long list of similar reports around the world, but with one rare detail: physical evidence. In the Alaskan region, especially near the Yukon River, mysterious disappearances continue to be reported. Longtime residents speak of lights in the sky, of sounds that don't belong to this world. And some, in silence, bear marks similar to Roger's, too afraid to speak. But now, they know they're not alone. And now, to you who made it to the very end of this incredible story, what do you think really happened? What chose him that night? And why him? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Had you ever heard of Roger McCarty's story before? Do you have any other details we might have missed? Your engagement is really important for this channel. We may not have all the answers, but the truth is, similar cases have happened and continue to happen by the thousands around the world, until the next mysterious and intriguing UFO case.